This team is clearly raring to go. Hi, everybody. Let's get stuck right in. My name is Richard Muirhead. I'm, as already said, managing partner of Fabric. Been around for a decade, backing great founders in this space. Unfortunately, not enough in the deep-in area, but great projects like Near and Ocean and Polkadot and so forth. Look, at Fabric, we've always maintained that the kind of superpower of Web3 is the ability to coordinate, get people to do stuff and deploy their activity and their resources. If you will, with a token, everybody achieves more. Team, get it? I made that up this morning. You can have it for free. This is a space I particularly love, actually, even though we haven't made investments. We're looking at how to sort of allocate and network bandwidth, actually as far back as last century. And we know that obviously the kind of granddaddy of use cases in this space is how proof of work is operating. We're proud of how that's in place. Proof of stake, obviously, now with the fantastic success of the merge just over a kind of year ago. But you know, that's fantastic, but it couldn't be a more pivotal time to try and go to the next level. Because as we shift into kind of high gear in the move towards AI and perhaps even AGI beyond that, we're finding bottlenecks. And those bottlenecks, those scarce resources, become incredibly expensive. And if we're going to avoid the centralization of power and profits, and indeed possibly propaganda, with companies that are driven by capitalism, we need to find a new business model, one that is decentralized, that has the same kind of economic impact as the centralized model. And I think if we do that, we can actually all create a system where the outcomes are actually far better than a kind of brittle, stovepipe, centralized model. It can be adaptive, it can be emergent, it can serve the needs of individuals and communities and the world at large. What I'm saying is I think the stakes have never been higher. So with all that being said, I'm going to let the panelists do a little introduction to themselves. We're going to start with Rowland from IoTeX. And I want to say, he seems to be connecting sort of physical devices of pretty much every description. What we'd like him to do, given his Uber background, is to deliver a decentralized Uber and an open permissionless one. Yes. And they could all be operating together, and we can skirt around those puddles more effectively. But over to you, Rowland.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So this is Rowland. So I'm the CEO co-founder of IoTeX. So we started back in the year of 2018. Actually, we are pretty much focused on IoT and blockchain, on day one. Now, after a few years of iteration, so now it's called deepin right now. But like the underlying spirit is all the same. So IoTeX is all about building like a deepin infrastructures, for builders, right? So in our thesis, so building a deepin projects should be as easy as building like a DeFi or NFT projects. Small team with big heart can do like an impactful work. So that's our fundamental thesis. Yeah. So we have like our own layer one, like the option compute, some identity stuff. So definitely like a 2.0, like an entire roadmap is actually coming along. So happy to talk with investors, with builders, with people who's passionate about deepin.
Thanks. And then on to you, Trevor, almost as old as me.
Yeah.
Got a storied background, making our metaverse dreams a reality with Render.
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. Trevor from Render Network. For those of you who don't know Render, Render was founded by creators for creators, really to enable fast, affordable, movie-quality rendering. And today, thousands of motion graphics artists contribute their consumer compute to run AI and rendering jobs in parallel at a fraction of the time and cost.
Thanks, Trevor.
Yeah.
And over to Ahmed at IO.net, who I've already heard has got more GPUs than Zuck at his command. I think I've got about 1 million. I think it's roughly the right number.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us a little bit more.
My name is Ahmed. I'm the CEO and founder of IO.net. IO.net is the creator of the Internet of GPUs, basically a new network where it started from a profound question: what if accessing GPU compute power for AI is as simple and as seamless as accessing the internet? And from there, we built the IO Cloud and all the IO Coin and the IO Worker and all the multiple components that basically built a compute layer on top of multiple networks on the network, on the crypto industry like Render and others. And from there, we basically built an infrastructure layer that allows anyone who wants to run large-scale AI workloads to seamlessly deploy a cluster of 5,000 GPU or 10,000 GPU, which you can't find anywhere on the planet. That's IONET. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ariel, love to hear about mapping the world and the honeypot that you've created there for people.
All right, so HiveMapper is a very simple idea. We are building a new global fresh map to compete with the likes of Google Maps to power both people in terms of their day-to-day navigation, businesses, right? So Uber, Lyft are obviously massive consumers of maps, and ultimately navigation for people just running around their city and so forth. And so the idea is pretty simple: is you buy this device from us, and so you install it in your car. And then you just do what a lot of people do, which is drive. And so all of the imagery that's being collected here is then being processed so that we can actually understand, okay, there's a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit sign, there's 3 lanes over here, there's road construction here. That's all happening on this device through a series of map AI process. And then we build that map, and then we go and sell it to various businesses and organizations all across the world. We've mapped about 18% of the global road network in about 15 months, so it's clearly working. And the beautiful part is, unlike a Waze, right, or many of the other predecessors, where the people who are really building the map never shared in the economics of it, when you're building this map through this device, you're actually earning our Honey token, and so you're sharing in the underlying economics of this map that we're all building together.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're going to start back at this end, but then we're going to jump around from there and keep it unexpected. And I'd love to kind of surface a couple of questions from the audience kind of towards the end if we can. I got a special request from the panelists to make it interactive. So we might ask for kind of 2 or 3 and then kind of maybe pick the best, if that's allowed. So, back to the key question here. So we spoke about how this new business model, driven at the heart of which is obviously tokens and token economics, it's essential if we're going to fight this good fight against centralization. And but with that, there is a feature, not a bug, which is its appeal to speculators. So I want to start with the question of how do you harness the power of that speculation, but also onboard folks who are really going to be sophisticated and help. I'll move to the second question, which is like really, deliver the map or deliver the GPUs and so forth. So I don't know. Rowland, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think you're talking about speculation, right? But speculation looking from the other side is basically like capital. They give you like an initial capital injection when the project is really small. Think about, you have like 3 friends working together, you have great idea to conquer the world, right? Where the capital is coming from. You don't want to go to VC on day one, trying to do a hard sell, hard pitch, but you might try something by yourself. Maybe having a token, maybe have a small community, maybe have people believe in you. I think that's kind of like a magic about crypto, about deeping especially. IoT networks has been known for have a huge upfront cost by design, manufacture, distribution of the devices. Then you will see something will work or not, right? But deeping, I think, actually have this magic of like crypto on day one. They give you something, you can try it out, right? Maybe with some small initial capital, you can also prove to your investor, to the world, something already works. So I definitely think it's a really good thing for deeping and crypto.
Got it. So it gets the capital.
All right. So for us, it starts by abstraction. First, having artists never have to deal with crypto, onboarding them onto Web3 from a fiat perspective, where they use the network to pay fiat for rendering jobs. And then the great thing is it's kind of an onion they can peel back from there, where they can contribute their node, become a node operator, and as they do, they start earning and learning. What we do on the crypto side is it really comes down to choosing the right model or tokenomics, and then being able to put the incentives to work for various players in the ecosystem. So a great example for us was we upgraded our chain recently, and in that process we were actually able to put upgrade incentives to the crypto side so that they could help us move over in a way that really harnesses it.
Excellent. Hamad.
Well, I mean, look, if I have a data center that's like $100 million, not too big, of H100s, and if I just basically buy that GPU power and I put it in the data center, and I'm waiting for my sales team to bring in long-term contracts to sell the GPUs here, generally, like this time I'm losing where I'm not, my device is not hired, my GPUs are not hired for any workload, whether AI workload or whatsoever workload. That is like this time, there's a time loss, like opportunity loss here. But when, and data centers like Amazon or Google Cloud or whatsoever, when these cloud providers, when you want to deploy a cluster, it takes like 15 minutes to just boot up a node. Because it's offline, they want to reduce electricity and whatsoever. For us, it takes like 30 seconds and you're already up and running. So imagine the speed difference. But the reason why we have that, and the reason which gives an incentive for a data center to run on IONET rather on AWS if it has the chance, is because on AWS, there is this time that's gone, right? I'm not gifting anything until someone comes here. But with a token system, it's so interesting that you can emit him some kind of rewards coming in from the IO coin rewards, small enough like to keep him stay, keep calm, the electricity bills are being paid, you don't have to worry about your capex and so on, until a job comes to you. Which basically, if I'm just like that, like if I'm not hired for the whole, like 2 years, if just my GPU is there, I basically bring back the value of the GPU just because I'm on the network. I'm providing that capital, compute capital power to the network. That itself give that someone like hype, like I want to get that coin and be part of such thing and reduce my expenses. That's why I like the tokenomics and deep-end projects. I love it.
I think that's super powerful. You can see how that can deliver, cheaper but also more adaptable than the centralized model using token economics. Ariel.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 examples. So the first one is this guy, Brad. So Brad basically bought, I think, about 100 of these devices pretty early on, actually, when we were just launching. And then he figured out who were the right kinds of drivers for the map, right? So obviously Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, and stuff like that. And so he bought these with his own capital, right? But then he distributed them to all these Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, Amazon Flex drivers, and then he split the tokens with them. So that really helped the network grow because he was identifying the right kind of driver. He had the capital, right? A lot of Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, they may not have the capital. So that was one really clever example. And he's now taught other of these entrepreneurs who've come into the network saying, if you want to replicate what I'm doing, here's the playbook. So that's one example. The other example is now more on the commercial fleet side. So this guy who operates, I think, about 1,000 car rentals in his fleet, he bought 1,000. Right? And so he's putting them in all his different car rentals all over various countries. And so that's a little bit on the commercial side. So both of those are really amazing because they help the map grow in a very effective and cost-effective way while also rewarding that person who's putting a little bit of capital at risk in terms of buying these devices.
That's great. That's super interesting because different takes right the way across the group. So the next sort of question area, and take it with examples wherever you want to go really, is this question of matching supply and demand. So for example, you don't want to map the hell out of central London and have 100,000 versions of the same map. And obviously there's many kind of layers to kind of what you are exactly mapping, but yet have different areas that are not mapped at all. And I guess another one would be there could be a lot of demand currently from mapping the puddles around Dubai, and how do you react like that? And the same in a different use case, but on the GPU side, how do you deliver low latency for inference in one part, and how do you deliver the high throughput that you need for training in another? So do you want to go first, Aaron, or work back the other direction?
Yeah, so really cool example. So we're working with this autonomous vehicle company, and they were tracking across 4 different cities in America, like Phoenix and Austin and Houston and whatever. They were tracking a specific type of issue. It has to do with construction work zones and stuff like that. So let's just take Phoenix. So they said to us, okay, here's about 3,000 locations all across Phoenix that we want to see that location, or we want that location mapped at least 3 to 4 times per week, okay? So the network in Phoenix metro area, for those of you who aren't familiar with Phoenix is massive. It just never ends, right? And so the normal network hit about 80% of them, right? 3 to 4 times a week, which is pretty good. But then in order to get to what the customer wanted, which was about 98% coverage, we introduced this concept called bursts, which is if you take a 5 or 10 minute detour off your normal course, then you will earn a little bit more because you hit that specific intersection where we were interested in. And that worked amazingly well. We took it from like 80% coverage for their 3,000 or 4,000 locations to like 98% coverage. But again, 3 to 4 times a week, right? So that's like, you know, a lot of coverage per week for, you know, 3,000 to 4,000 locations. So being able to identify a very, 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 very specific location and then say, hey, if you're in this area, take a 5-minute detour and you'll earn a little bit more. You can go down to that micro level. And there's also things that we do more at the macro level in terms of like, hey, we want more of this region, less of that region for various reasons.
Fantastic examples, and we'll come back to it maybe, but I'm intrigued. How can that be ultimately be automated? So like the network itself works out where it needs to change the incentives to fill in the gaps. I mean, you can go now or come back to it.
I'll just answer it really quickly in terms of how we're doing it. So like as customers are hitting the map and we're not returning good results, we're then basically auto creating those bursts if we think there's not enough demand there based upon what we're seeing on the demand side.
Yeah.
So I'll pass it over to you.
I think having supply figured first it's more like the chicken and egg problem, which we are like living in live. We first have few clients who are like, hey, we want 3 A100s, we want 300 A100s or 400 A100s. And we're like, we only have 300, but they want 1,300 or 1,000 more. So we didn't have that supply. But then once the token incentive came in, we managed to grow the supply. What actually happened is really interesting. So a client came to us, reached out to Twitter, some startup, and he said, hey guys, we have GPUs in Lambda Cloud and AWS, but our use case wouldn't fit hosting the GPUs there, and they don't have GPU supply in Korea, South Korea, or Japan, because we have most of our users there, but there's no GPUs we can lease there. Why? Because their app, and we're noticing this trend now, like we're moving from waiting 5 seconds for the image to be generated to real time. I want AI real time. Imagine if it's like Sora, like I'm playing the game and it's real time changing the environment. Then meaning that the industry is moving to more real-time model inference. So I need the generation so fast. And that can only be solved if you have GPUs in every country where there are users of that product. So this company that came to us said, we have users in Japan and Korea, and we want, if we will do GPUs in Lambda Cloud, which they're in, it will take 300 milliseconds for the trip geographically. It's going to take time through the internet to reach there. But our requirement is 150 milliseconds for the image to reach, generate, and come back. So we think you guys have GPUs in the countries where there are no GPUs. So we would like to deploy our model geographically closer to the end user. So then suddenly we found out, wait, did we just build a CDN for ML models? Meaning that we basically distribute the client model on 139 countries. And then if a user came in from Saudi Arabia or Dubai, the trip doesn't have to, the computer request doesn't have to go to OpenAI, Microsoft back in SF or East Coast and so on. It could just go to the nearest GPU provider here, right? And that basically gives a 20 millisecond latency, which was really amazing. And they moved all their infrastructure out from such providers because just availability. But we couldn't reach that availability before we kind of crowdsourced this from the crypto community. Like all of us worked together to build this massive network of GPUs in a lot of locations around the world, 140 countries. And then from there, with that massive supply, suddenly we found out we actually built something no one actually can build without having 600, 700, 800,000 GPU. It's like no one have reached that level of having 800,000 GPUs all across the world. Like maybe, yes, Zuckerberg has it in SF and their data centers in Facebook, but it's in one location. Here we have it, across the globe, which is something new. Like we haven't, it's pushing the frontiers. Like we are going in where no one have gone before. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely exciting. And I was just actually catching up with Zuck's announcement the last couple of days. Llama 3, being open sourced, which we're very supportive of, but also I haven't tried it yet, but apparently you can be talking of inference and latency, you can be typing your prompt to generate, imagery, and as you type, the image is changing. So, like, I mean, that's the expectation we're going to have when we shift to a generative model. And this is one of the things I took away from actually the keynote at the NVIDIA keynote from Jensen the other day. Like, the whole architecture of the physical part of the internet is going to have to change to adapt to that generative model. So I think that's exactly in tune with what you're talking about, Trevor.
Wow. Well, scaling a two-sided marketplace is hard. In fact, it's one of the hardest problems you have running one of these networks. Typically, you start by getting enough supply of compute out there so that people can onboard and use it. But at any point, if you break that, you get into a situation like we had this week where you can't find an Uber and you can tell right away it's not in balance. For us, it was really focused on first getting that initial batch, incenting those users to stay, those nodes to stay, and then going about it from an artist perspective and ramping that up. And it's been a phenomenal run. While we've done that, we've had a wait list that we've grown. It's got to about 1 million GPUs. So it's been an asset that's built up outside without breaking that balance. And the great thing for us was this year we were able to actually open that up again as we started moving into AI and bringing on partners like IONET who were then able to leverage it in a different way. But it's a really hard problem, and honestly, you're out of balance at any moment in the system, so it needs constant focus.
I want to shout out for Render, because at that moment when that client came to us, we were like, no one knows about us. IONET was on stealth, and I called Trevor and like, look, we have GPUs in Canada and Iceland from, through Filecoin SPs, but we need GPUs all around because this client came in, and we're like, but we have community everywhere. Let's plug them in quickly. And so we plugged in their GPUs, and that was the beginning, because they already have the massive community, which is all around the world. And without them, honestly, that wouldn't have happened. Yeah. So shout out to them.
That's a good job.
Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting question about like a DP usage, right, or use cases. Yeah, so DP is definitely like a design for people, used by people. So we're not saying like a DP replace like an entire physical infrastructure on day one, but it actually gets like a fill into some small niches here and there. I can give you some examples. So there's a project who's doing like a Tesla, like a wall charger, sort of like an Airbnb for Tesla wall charger on IoTeX, right? So idea is pretty simple. So they have validated this idea within a small community. Basically, you can share your wall charger with other kind of Tesla owners, and they charge them a fee. That actually works in a small environment. Then they kind of like a scaling up using IoTeX as an underlying infrastructure. So that is like one use case is how DeepIn can make this like a Tesla charging more efficient, more convenient, and cheaper. And another example we saw so far is it's called Network 3. It basically uses devices, they have people to running their software actually on their computers during the idle times, and they measure like the internet or scraping information from the internet in a decentralized way, right? And all the information they scraped will get aggregated all together to produce like an image for the internet. So this is also another very interesting one. That is not has a huge TAM or like a market right now, but it's actually used by a lot of people. It's kind of useful. I feel like DeepIn will start, here and there, and eventually we're replacing the world. We're seeing like a Web3 version of the Uber one day.
One day.
One day, yeah. Hopefully soon.
So, so obviously Uber had its own challenges with regulations in different geographies in its early days as it kind of, pushed the frontier. I'm intrigued, and actually we didn't really kind of do any pre-discussion on this, but it would seem we're all enthralled by the power of the token economics here to get people to deliver this new physical infrastructure, and that it's going to be very powerful. What are the challenges or questions that you wrestled with from a regulatory perspective with unleashing that power? Perhaps commentary on different geographies. I mean, I think we know that Dubai and the UAE are working very hard to make this a welcoming environment from that perspective. So I don't know, anyone want to go first? Do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, we have it from both sides. So there's obviously the crypto regulation side, which is what you're referring to, but we have also, because we operate in the physical world, and these devices are driving around in all of these different locations, we also have privacy regulations as well as national security regulations, right? So South Korea, for example, has very specific regulations related to their national security and mapping and where all that data can reside and so forth, right? So that's a good example. Europe, as many of you know, has very, very, very strong privacy regulations, right? So there's a whole set of things that we need to do in terms of processing all of the data on this device. So we have to privacy mask, effectively blur all of the names of specific objects, people's faces, bodies, cars, license plates, all that kind of stuff. And that's why we're actually doing a lot of the actual map AI processing in terms of detecting, okay, that's a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit sign, there's a construction zone there. So that in some locales, we're not even uploading the imagery, right? Because we're not allowed to. And so that is, depends oftentimes by country, and even within that country, by specific state or region of it. So you have to be able to balance all of those different privacy regulations in addition to all the crypto regulations. So we kind of have it from both sides.
Do I take it from that you're not commenting on the crypto regulations?
I'm not commenting on what?
The crypto regulations.
Yeah, crypto regulations, I'm an American. I got to leave that to somebody else.
Okay. But it is interesting on the privacy side. I think obviously you in particular, you're not just coordinating physical infrastructure and activity, you bridge across into the question of data. And I think all of this innovation taking place at this layer is going to be pivotal to try and make sure we can do a good job at the data layer as well, where one of the challenges is that it's possible to kind of game the system. Like when you're trying to define what the truth is. I guess in your case, the image is the image, and it's deterministic. And in Trevor, in your case as well, it also is. But this question of privacy and the truth is going to be a big one for the kind of layer above the physical.
Yeah, I mean, there was an image that was circulating that the Pentagon was attacked, right? And it looked pretty real, right? And the markets reacted to it. It turns out that image was obviously fake, that the Pentagon was not attacked and it wasn't blowing up and so forth. But that is a major concern, is if somebody were to hack into these systems and say, hey, Hive Mapper has detected that whatever, a certain part in London blew up or was destroyed, that would have severe ramifications. So yeah, definitely it's something that we think a lot about, is like, how do we verify that the data that's coming off this device is actually accurate?
You become a news agency, or you become a source of alpha for hedge funds.
Maybe we already are.
Maybe you already are, exactly. Good. So, Trevor, do you want to comment on that truth verifiability question?
Yeah. I mean, so much in that. On the regulation side, I think decentralized GPUs really help this problem. Number one, to start with, because you can then do it on a country-by-country basis. We're in the middle of a real battle for GPUs, and so being able to actually, go only choose some in certain locations, I think is a real benefit here. But when it comes down to the data side that you're referring to, for us and our artists, it's really critical. They are angry because they have centralized companies training on their data, on their artwork. And that's something that we're really looking to try and help change. We're actually moving towards generating synthetic data on the render network to be a base model for people to be able to train without it having stolen data in that model, and then layering on top of it and using the blockchain in a way that is verifiable and really goes to the core problem we're about to have here when you talk about images. We're about to move into a state where generating an image or a video is trivial, and there's going to be an abundance of these everywhere. And in that case, it's really, really hard to distinguish between what is generated and what is created. And so using blockchain, for me, is fundamental to this, to show proof of creation, to show proof of render, and is one of the reasons that really drives the render network on these problems.
Yeah, I guess it's a good point that delivering a truly decentralized physical infrastructure helps with the argument around crypto regulations, that this is not a security, but it also helps us deliver the infrastructure that we can perhaps trust, the trustless infrastructure we can trust, to be outputting data around which we can get consensus on the truth. So it's a foundation that we definitely need. And on your side, again, I'm trying to tempt people to get into the crypto regulation conversation, but definitely avoiding it.
Crypto regulation is super important. I think deepin is least likely to be considered as a security, right? Because everything we talk about is about the utility, right? It's like for transportation, for your data, like for UBI even. Those things are all utility. But you mentioned about, I think one point which is very important is deep-in verification. So this is a layer which doesn't really belong to the blockchain right now. So that's kind of like one thing we're working on in the entire like a deep-in protocol stack is, you have to have an ability or another network which is off-chain that collects all the data or information from GPU, from sensors, like this, right? So you have to have some people to put the rule here into this layer. Says, okay, so here is the rule. If this data points shows that it can pass those rules, it's considered as like a valid data points. This can be using like a ZK snark. This can be used like a TEE. There's a bunch of technologies we can use to provide this validated proof. This proof essentially goes to the blockchain, says, oh, so this device has done its job, or this GPU has done this computation or rendering. That's why you should give this guy like a 10 tokens, right? So this layer, using any blockchain, you cannot do it because it's computational intensive right now. That's why like we're kind of working with a few teams, here and there. They're doing ZK, they're doing like a GPU. We're trying to package all the things together to provide this deep-in verification capability.
I think DeepIn has a very challenging approach to the regulation because you have to fight it's a battle of two fronts. The first front is you're fighting on the crypto normal regulation, if this is security or not security and so on, and normal crypto regulation for custody and whatsoever. Then the other front that you're fighting at is the new executive house order and the infrastructure as a service regulation. So once the US regulation in terms of the commerce or the NSA or so on, once they notice that there's some people building some layer that basically takes out monitoring and censoring and control out of the government hand in a way and making it more private, it becomes really, really sensitive, and especially with the geopolitical tension between China and Taiwan and all the other things regarding the GPU bans and on exporting. So all these embargoes that's happening on China, it's causing any infrastructure as a service labeled provider to soon to abide with new regulation that's coming out. That's not only you have to do the normal crypto stack, but you have to add to that the infrastructure as a service stack. So for example, like this new regulation, it's an executive house order, and if you provoke it, if you do it, you provoke the Patriot Act. Like that's how serious this is. So, for example, like what happened, something happened to us. So, when we launched, we had like 40 to 80,000 GPUs. Not we launched, like 2 months ago, in March, February, we reached that number. Then a workshop happened between NSA, Render, Solana Foundation, Filecoin. They summoned everyone in the DeepIn ecosystem immediately. Everyone in the DeepIn ecosystem was summoned. It was like, guys, in a way where like this could go out of hand. Another way around, and like honestly, you don't want to give this compute power to China, period. So, and that was when 80,000 GPUs. Now it's 800,000 GPUs. It's capable of 51 attack on every GPU network in the crypto market. That's how dangerous it is. So imagine how much attention from hackers they want to access this compute power and do a 51 attack on Toncoin or do a 51 attack on other GPU-based mining algorithms. That's one thing. The other thing is with that massive compute power, you could train a machine learning model that is hacking, it's malicious, that does malicious things. So how could the regulation now, that's the new regulation, how can we as a regulator be careful that you are not going to give the service for D5 sanctioned countries and embargoed countries from accessing massive compute power without KYC and long processes? How can it, basically the compute power, you're gonna come to our platform one day and you will go in, it's like level 1, level 2, level 3 KYC, and each level will give you what amount of GPU compute power you can access. It's not I want that. It's if I don't do that, they're gonna shut me down. There's no joke here. Like they will really shut me down. And they are so much serious about this, more than they are serious about money laundering. Like DeFi, normal, someone doing transactions without knowing who is, okay. But someone accessing 100,000 GPUs without knowing who he is, oh no, this is Patriot Act invocation. So now we have to like battle at the front, like we want privacy to our people. We want, what is the right way for the internet of GPUs to be owned for the world, like it's owned by the people for the people, in a way where it has like verifiable credentials and whatsoever, that keeps the privacy at the same time, but also abides with the regulation that could make big trouble for us. So regulation for deepen is coming, and it's coming really hard, and it's coming so fast. It's faster than the SEC, it's faster than this. These guys are like really serious, like no joke.
Well, okay, so we thought we had a hard time with politicized regulation. Good, a round of applause.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
And we thought we had a tough time with regulation sometimes being co-opted and politicized. We around DeFi and securities and so forth. I think we've now ticked off kind of like technology sovereignty, the intelligence services, KYC, we've got all data privacy.
Everyone.
We've got trouble on every quadrant. We're surrounded, and it sounds like it's going to get more complex at least, rather than less complex. So that's good. We're in this for the cause and for the excitement.
As a community together, we will do it slowly, the right way, owning our data, having the ability for everyone to have access, just like the internet. We all should have access to compute power. That's it. Like anyone should have access to compute power. No one should limit me from how much compute power should I access. So how could we do it in a way where it's the network verify that the user is not doing anything malicious or trying to be dangerous to others, but still giving that freedom to people. That's, I think, the future of deepen.
100%. Certainly, if I build on the examples given by my two daughters, access to compute power in form of their iPad is a human right, and they need to go get it. But it applies to everybody else too.
No, just on the crypto regulation, probably shouldn't say this too loudly, but it's 6 months ago, a year ago in DC, it was like crypto has no use cases, right? Like it's just meme coins as this, right? And so all of a sudden it's like Hivemapper shows up, IONET shows up, Render shows up. These are real use cases across massive markets. And all of a sudden, at least in DC, that part of the argument seems to have gone quiet, right? And so like you got to show up with real use cases. We still need regulation, obviously, that is clear and all that kind of stuff. But I think we're doing a better job educating those folks of like, no, there's real utility going after really massive markets against incumbents. And so if you just want Google Maps to own maps for the rest of the world, for all time, then sure, that's what you're going to have. If you want competition, this is one way to get competition.
Yeah, no, that's where I put it. It helps have a use case to evidence utility, which is a good beginning of the conversation. Trevor, do you want to comment? Yeah. So I think we're kind of cruising into the last 5 minutes. What I'm intrigued about is that, as has just been commented, this has really started to take off fast just in recent, times. I think partly obviously driven by the maturity of the Web3 stacks, the layer 1 blockchains. We can get into a discussion about which one is your preferred choice. Some moves to Solana here. I don't have Solana bags, but we could definitely feel free to comment about whether there are other L1s you might want to go to. I know on the meme coin side, there's been a lot of activity on Base, for example, and I am a big supporter of NEAR. How do you define now, as the activity is surging, when you feel like you've got some level of maturity in your core model? And like in these last few minutes, where are you going to take it from there? What is the next level of innovation from your perspective beyond the kind of the core utility that you're delivering?
Yeah, so I think one comment on the meme coin I was thinking about while you were asking is like a meme coin is actually welcomed by people, right? If you think about it, it's so simple and also carries some sort of like an emotion people want to express, basically. So that's why it's very much understood by people and liked by people, by the community as well, right? So I feel like a deepin somehow carries the same spirit. It's also like used by people and should be understood by people because this is like a Web3 version of Uber, this is a Web3 version of Airbnb, so on and so forth. But I think like a Deepin's problem is like a scale, or scaling is really slow, right? So if you see, you guys are doing a great job, basically, scaling like a high mapper down from scratch. But we see a lot of projects, especially, on IoTeX, so they have like a very steep curve to grow into a massive, like a scale so people can understand. And how can we educate the market so people can understand, So this is some real shit, right? So we should trust this token. I think this is like the biggest challenge in Deepin, and we should find a way to kind of come over.
Kind of education.
Yeah.
Trevor.
I think you're chatting to three of us who are on Solana here, so I think that sort of shows a definite impetus there on the Deepin side. I think for us, there was a technology play that Rust made a lot of sense. Helium had just moved over and had a very similar model, so that was good. But a big part of it is also low cost and high throughput. And when I look going forward, I think a lot of our original premise was putting proof of creation on chain. And I think you'll see a lot more of that happening as we go forward, more real time. Leveraging the data creation on chain, and using the fact that we have a high throughput, low cost system to do that. Our artists who create things that are put on every chain, and we'd love that to persist. There are a lot of great use cases outside of that beyond just the creation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So today, so we use Solana. We love Solana. The way I look at it is it's infrastructure. And so the less resources from an engineering perspective that we're spending on Solana, the better, right? Like if 25–30% of our team was on Solana and working Solana, that would be bad, right? So today it's effectively 1.5 people, which is amazing, right? Like that's a good thing that it's 1.5 people. Because that means is the rest of the team is focused on product and value and utility that we can provide our customers or our contributors. So today, all of the reward transactions and the consumption transactions in terms of people consuming the map, that's all on Solana, on the blockchain. We're starting the process of moving some of the map data itself to the blockchain, right? So people can say, yes, this is verified, this location exists, at this location there's construction and so forth, right? Many of you probably had issues getting here. I did yesterday. And so when I got in the car, it said, yeah, it's going to be a little bit delayed. Usually it's a 30-minute drive from my hotel, and it was going to be a 40-minute. It ended up taking me about 3 hours, okay? Because a major road had been flooded. Now, that road hadn't just been flooded in the last hour, but I say to myself, okay, when HiveMapper is in its fully developed state, we will know about that flood, right? We'll provide visual evidence of that flood, right? Because we have eyes all over the world. And then we'll really understand that, no, Ariel, this isn't going to take you 45 minutes. This is going to take you 3 hours because, boom, here's 500 meters of this road that is flooded with 2 feet of water. And so how do we do that and get all of that data on chain? That will take a year or two, but it will ultimately get there.
Amazing. It's going to be really what happens. Is anyone got a burning question? I'm probably not allowed to do this. Too many questions. One at the back. It's a very packed room. How exciting is that? It's like really, you guys have really been, I think this is like real use cases, practical, physical, relatable, with real opportunity to be involved and to earn and benefit from being part of these systems. And I think a testimony to all of you for what you've managed to deliver. I can't believe this many people are that shy, but I saw one hand at the back. Any final points? Ahmad, we jumped over you at the last moment there. Any final points you want to make before we wrap up?
Me?
Yeah.
I think AI is going to be 30% of the coin market cap very, very soon. And I believe it should. It's one of the most important things that's changing life. It's like basically bringing internet to be saying internet is 20% of crypto.
Got it.
Makes no sense. It's everything.
Yeah.
But I think AI coin market cap will be at least 30% of the market in the next 2 or 3 years.
Look, it's been super exciting, being able to do this with you guys and get to know you very rapidly. I said behind stage to people that we're actually not here for the money. We're here because we care about the things we're building. I really feel that from all 4 of you. And I think for that basis, I want to have a selfie. Hold on a second. You ready? And I want a round of applause for everybody on the stage, and thank you very much for your attention.